The Almost Perfect Podcast.
Welcome to the Thunderdome. Welcome to the Almost Perfect Podcast, a celebration of fuck-ups, failures, and falling flat on your face. This is a podcast that believes you can learn from experience, but that experience doesn't have to be your own. Hi, I'm Bob Perfect, and I'm a functional fuck-up. Let's learn from somebody else's mistakes. And today we are learning from a whole bunch of people because it is episode 100. And we are looking back on the last 99 episodes through the lens of like a couple minutes of like 14 episodes, I think, by the time I'm done here. So yeah, this is a look back at the last 2.5, basically actually 3 years of the Almost Perfect Podcast. I looked at my Instagram archives, the memories, and it showed me that I actually, this week, 3 years ago, did the first interview for the Almost Perfect Podcast with Bala Weinster in my lounge in Umbilo that you'll never hear because I try to plug 2 USB microphones into a laptop without any sort of audio interface. And so only one half of that conversation is actually recorded. But we've learned so fucking much over this period of time. I've learned a hell of a lot about podcasting, about recording interviews with people, whether it is in person or it is over the internet. And I've also learned the limitations of noise reduction software. So together we have gone on this long journey where I have steadily improved, I like to think, at this whole podcasting shtick. And I'd like to thank you for coming along on this journey at whichever point you joined us, even if it is right now. If this is the first episode of the podcast you're hearing, thank you very much for coming on board. I think you're going to enjoy it. I'm coming at you after sitting in the dark for 2 hours, drinking some brandy and Coke and watching New Girl on my phone whilst I wait for the electricity to come back on. It has been a very manic and hectic week for me. I managed to pick up some work this week, but the deadlines are super tight, super last minute vibes, which kind of cut into this a bit. There were going to be a few more quotes. I was maybe going to do some other things that I wanted to experiment with, but unfortunately I got to make that paper. And so that's taken up a bit of the time, but I'm very happy with what I've managed to achieve here. And in general, pretty happy with what I've managed to achieve here. This has been quite a roller coaster of a journey. There's been highs, there have been lows, there have been amazing interviews, there have been cuck interviews, there have been guests who I've now become friends with. There have been guests who I was friends with who I now don't even speak to anymore. So it has been a wild, wild ride. And I am, as I say, just grateful that you are along for the ride. But I'm also, like I say, I am a little bit proud of myself to have managed to have achieved all of this on my own. And well, kind of. Not necessarily entirely on my own, mostly on my own. Like I'd say 80% of this vibe is me. The other 20% is the guests. No, the other 19% is the guests. The other 1% is you guys. You guys are the 1% is what I'm saying, and we are the 99%. Fuck you. Give us some money. That's all I'm saying here. That is entirely the what am I even saying there? I don't fucking know. I'm kind of a little bit nervous right now. I'm kind of hoping that you enjoy the rest of what's to come here today. Like I say, I've got a whole bunch of quotes from a whole bunch of different people that I've interviewed over the last 2.5 years. And these are stories and bits that stuck out with me a little bit over the years. But also what's kind of weird is with some of the episodes I went in thinking I was going to get a certain quote, but then listening through, I actually found other parts that I was like, you know what? I'm going to use this instead. So this is a collection of just incredible stories or inspiring stories or just fun and interesting and basically stories and bits that I think represent what we have done here over the last 2.5 years with the Almost Perfect podcast. Some of them are funny, some of them are very real and very personal. You know, we talk about sex, we talk about drugs, we talk about death, life, religion, all of it. You know, this is a podcast where nothing is necessarily off topic unless you're going to be a bit of a cunt about it. That's kind of my only rule, is to don't be too much of a cunt about things, and we're going to have a good time on the podcast. But people have been super generous. People have been super open, super honest, super real. And that's what I am incredibly grateful for when it comes to all of this, that so many people have shared so freely and given you and me so much like valuable information and insight and perspective, and just these, it's just something that's truly humbling to be a part of, even though it's mostly me that's doing a lot of the work. You know, I one episode of these usually takes like a day and a half at least to put together, between like I was working it out today, like between the research, the setting things up, the doing the interview, the editing, the posting it online, you know, the uploading, the writing the copy, the putting it to social media, all of those things, and the creating the little videos and stuff. So yeah, like it's a lot of work, but it's something that's super rewarding. And especially because this is something that you support. You support it over on Patreon. And that's, I don't know if I'd still be doing this if you weren't. You know, if there weren't so many people that over the years have contributed to the Patreon, and so many people who have actually contributed throughout the time period. Like there are people who have been on board since almost the very beginning. So once again, I know I've said it a million times in these 7 minutes. I am super grateful, super thankful, and I just want to say once again, thank you to all of you for supporting this. And we're gonna keep going. We're gonna act like it's gonna take another 18 years or so at the current rate, but episode 1000. That's the end goal of all of this, and I hope to see many of you there at that goal. And who knows, maybe we'll keep going past there. Anyway, this podcast is brought to you by you. That's right, over at patreon.com/almost perfect. There is a tier. It is called the titular titles tier. Now, this is the $10 tier. This is the big baller tier. This is a tier for the people who want to stunt on everyone else and show that they are the ultimate supporters of the Almost Perfect podcast. Or maybe they're just like very generous people who like what I'm doing here and want to support, you know? They might even feel a little awkward about this whole situation where I read out their names every single week on the podcast. But anyway, here we go. Shout outs to the key grip, Neil Green. He actually features in this episode. You're going to hear him pretty soon. Shout outs to Neil Green, who is the key grip. A bit of a downgrade since he used to be working at East Coast Radio, but we love having him here at Almost Perfect Media. Also, shout outs to Karan Sleman, who is the Almost Perfect hedge fund manager. Also, another ex-guest of this podcast. You can go check his episode out under Parable, Parabyl. Shout out to Kat Jenkin. Wow, another ex-guest. It's almost like I interview people and then they feel so thankful for the opportunity to express themselves on this wonderful platform that they decide to support it going forward. Wow. Not that everyone's done that. I'm not guilt tripping the rest of you who are listening to this now or anything, but you know, shout outs to Kat Jenkin, who is the inevitable ruler of the universe, and Queen Swifty. Shout outs to Karan Chetty, who is the assistant to the regional manager. Shout outs to Chief Sales Officer of Subtle Heresies in the Greater Overberg region, Rousseau. Rousseau has definitely been one of the longest standing members of the titular titles tier, so especially shout outs to you, bro. Much appreciated. Another long-standing member is Stephen Olivier, who is the executive producer. I would hope the executive producer has been around for a while, so shout outs to you. Shout outs to Vishendra Naidu. I'm actually going to read an email from him in just a little bit. He is a spiritual advisor, and he's done some great work in the last little while. Much needed work. Shout outs to Tyron Love, who is the pantsless weasel. I did say last week we need to get that weasel some pants, so I think we get another 1 or 2 people on the titular titles tier that can be the pantsed weasel. I think a pants weasel would still be pantsless, because if you pant someone, you're taking the pants off. So yeah, either way, this weasel's not going to get pants anytime soon. Also, shout outs to Julian, who is the king, longtime supporter of this podcast, longtime supporter of a lot of the projects that I've done. I obviously greatly appreciate it. And I look forward to the time that we get to share some beers together after a show again. I am really looking forward to that. And lastly, shout outs to our anonymous benefactor. Yes, we've got someone who doesn't actually want to be named. But if you can figure out who this mysterious person is, I will give you a clue here. They have actually been involved in some sort of the look and feel of the Almost Perfect podcast. So if you can figure that out, who the anonymous benefactor is, hit me up, bob@almostperfect.co.za, and I'll send you a pack of stickers. So that is the titular titles tier. You can also support this podcast by buying a mug. They are 100 Rand each. They've got the Almost Perfect logo on them. They look slick as fuck, and they are printed by the print room here in Durban. 10 Rand from each sale goes to Sisonke. Now, Sisonke is an organization that is by sex workers, for sex workers, and they are working to decriminalize sex work here in South Africa. So go check them out at sisonke.org.za. And after you've done that and you've donated a bunch of money to them, come back to me and buy a mug, and know that a little bit of that cash goes to them as well. So with that out the way, it's time to get into this episode of the podcast, which actually starts with two wonderful emails that I received. One from an ex-guest of the podcast, and one from a patron and a friend of mine who I played Magic with over the years, and who genuinely made me cry. So I'm gonna start with this one. Both these dudes made me cry, but I'm gonna start with these emails because in my last newsletter, I asked people to tell me what they've learned from this podcast. Tell me what some of their favorite episodes were. And both Luke Mulver and Vishendra Nadu got back to me. And so I'm going to share what Vishendra had to say, which was, "Hey there. This email is a little late, but I hope it gets to you in time for episode 100, but I'm not confident it will. In brackets, that's what I get for procrastinating. Don't worry, I procrastinated a whole week, gave us both a run-up for this thing, so you made it in time for episode 100. He says, "I've loved hearing stories from people with much more varied existence than my own, hearing the risks they take and how, even if shit went sideways, they just kept on going. I know that sounds like a very generic positive answer, but let me explain a little. I'm someone who never really got into the essay culture scene. Whether it was music, writing, art, or entertainment, my attention was focused on international people or groups and things they would do. Essay music was just people trying hard to be like those artists and failing miserably, and the comedians just sounded too stale? Whatever it was, I just couldn't bring myself to appreciate my country and the people in it. Call it pessimism or whatever, but yeah. Then some dude called Bob, but also called Darren, hey, that's me, asked for a lift to Magic at the Unseen shop one day, and speaking to him on the rides to and from F&M started to open my eyes just a little bit to the variety of people you can find in Durban. And then he put on a comedy show at the Batcave, which wasn't as well supported as I wish, because fuck, his passion for performance came through in every conversation we had about comedy, and I felt that this would just make him drown in negativity. In brackets, also, I thoroughly enjoyed the show. But no, later on, the annual comedy festival would start, and seeing the talent in Durban alone showed me that I'd missed out on so much. And then the podcast showed me the variety of talented people that we have in the country, and that we have people who are just as passionate and talented as those internationals I loved. You and the podcast give South Africans a platform to shine, to share, and to inspire. And that's my favorite part of it. No matter the guest, no matter the topic, just hearing about different lived experiences within my own country, my own city, made me adjust my way of thinking. Now, I try my best to support local artists where I can, whether it's buying a local comic book instead of a Marvel one, or that bead artist on the side of the road creating beautiful patterns. I try listening to a local artist when I'm driving rather than the same generic top 10 playlist that Spotify suggests. So yeah, I hope that makes sense, and whether it gets into the podcast or not, thank you for keeping it going for over 100 episodes. Kind regards, Vish. Well, bro, thank you so much for that. Like I said, that genuinely touched me when I read it because that's exactly why I do this and why I've done a lot of what I do. Like, obviously, the stand up comedy is for me. That's a thing that I do to express myself and my ideas and reconcile with the world. But things like this and things like Durban is Yours and a lot of the writing that I've done over the years has been to try and highlight and showcase other people and other things that I think are cool and that I think might not necessarily get the props that they deserve. So that I've managed to have this impact with you is literally everything I've ever wanted. You know, that's the goal, man. That's the fucking goal with all of it. So it really warms my heart. It really makes me feel like I'm on the right path. And it really does is just, it gives me the fuel to carry on with this thing, to try and make it, to episode 1000. Got one more email, and then we're gonna get into the quotes, into the little snippets, into the look back at the last 2.5 years, the last 99 episodes of the Almost Perfect podcast. But first, here is an email from an ex-guest of this podcast. This is by Luke Mulver. Bob, my boy. While I have found all of the Almost Perfect podcasts that I have listened to thoroughly enjoyable, I like the qualifier of that he has listened to. But yeah, he has found them thoroughly enjoyable, darkly hilarious, and undeniably informative about a pretty wide spectrum of stuff. I would have to say that the biggest inspiration I get from them is you, bruh. Aw. The fact that you're just pursuing what you love, hell or high water, regardless of obstacles, personal or professional. I think that you and I both know that people like us couldn't stop doing what we do, even if we wanted to. We are wired as creatives. It ain't just a calling. It's in our goddamn DNA. Anyone who can quit an art was never really an artist to begin with. I believe this is a running theme with a lot of your guests as well. These aren't just our jobs, these are our passions. Writing, art, music, speechcraft, wit, things we love, things we are. Self-depreciation aside, in brackets, I know that game too. I have a great deal of respect for what you do and what you've done over the years. Not just because I know that behind your dry humor is fecund passion, but the fact that you're always trying to pull up others, even if it might mean potential missed opportunities for you. Shit. You're still here in Durban with the rest of us gutter snaps. Mad admiration. Sometimes the work may seem thankless, but know that peeps are out here appreciating you. Now that I've finished blowing smoke up your ass, keep it up, homie. It's episode 100 and beyond. Luke. Thank you. Just thank you, bro. You are someone who inspires me. Like your constant creativity, your constant output of work, you create comics in Durban. Like if that isn't ice skating uphill, I don't know what is. But I'm with you, man. Like that is the thing. It is a calling. It's a sickness almost. It's this thing of like just being driven by feeling like you have to do a thing and you have to make it work and you have to just, despite whatever happens, despite the lows, because there are a lot of lows, especially with stuff like this, especially when you don't have budgets and you don't have the same kind of networks other people might have, or the same kind of, brand name, like, or name value or whatever. Like, I'm not someone who's on TV or radio or all of that. So this shit can sometimes feel pointless and it can feel like it's not reaching a lot of people, but that doesn't make it any less important, and it doesn't make the stories that are shared here and the conversations that I had and the people who do listen to it and the people who do interact with it any less important. So like that's something I've definitely learned with this podcast, is because with other projects that I've had with writing, like with Durban is Yours, and even with everything else that I've written for, they big audiences. It's a large number of people reading what I put out there, and this just isn't on the same scale. And in a weird way, that's almost exactly what I want. It's finding finding people who give a fuck and who are willing to take the time to listen and to learn and to implement things into their own lives. Like, that's the whole point of all of this, is to try and provide something for the people who can't help but be creative, who can't help but, despite the fact that they know that a career in music is one of the dumbest things you could ever do, that a career in comedy is just going to mean hanging out with narcissistic assholes for every fucking weeknight for a long period of time, that writing means sitting in front of a computer on your own, being incredibly lonely for days and weeks on end, and still they pursue it, still they do the thing. Like, they get rejected constantly over and over again. And that's who this podcast is for. Yes, it's some of the guests. Yes, it's very much the people who are on the podcast. But I like to think, and we've done that, we've had quite a few people who, you know, are listeners of the podcast, supporters of the podcast, who have been guests because they do have those same qualities as the guests. And I assume that if you listen to something like this, there is that spark within you that feels like, fuck it, I just have to create these things, whatever those things are. Like, you have to express yourself, and you have to do it in whichever ways are available to you. So much respect to you, Luke. I greatly appreciate this email, and I greatly appreciate your work in general. Go check out the Luke Mulver episode of this podcast. It is episode number 32, so go and check that out. When you got a bit of time in your hands, you want to learn what it's like to be an independent comic book creator here in South Africa. So with that out the way, we're going to get into the look back, the thing that has caused a lot of mental stress for me, because I've listened to a lot of episodes of the podcast, not as many as I was going to because of the load shedding and the having work, and fuck, I've got like a leaking pipe, and now motherfuckers have to come in early in the morning to break down the wall and fix that shit, so that takes time out of my schedule. So there were going to be some more episodes I was going to touch on, but unfortunately haven't been able to do that. This is the Almost Perfect podcast. If everything went perfectly, it wouldn't be that podcast. But we are going to take a look back now. These are interesting stories from a number of different people. I will introduce them before we get into them. And you're going to hear a great sampling of what we have managed to achieve here together. You, me, and not quite the 99 other people, because there were a couple times, I'm not even going to get into the canon of this fucking podcast, because it's even worse than Star Wars. It's like, there's these little side comics that were canon, but they're not canon anymore, whatever. Like, just, this is episode 100, and here it comes. So first up, we have Neil Green from episode 3, all the way back in episode 3, but Neil and I go way further back than this podcast. We actually did an episode of this podcast beforehand. It was another one of those situations where I fucked up the recording. But before that, you know, we had a podcast called the Live from the Winston podcast. Caused quite a stir from time to time. You can find that on the internet somewhere. Go. You can just Google and you'll find that. But this is a cool look at, you know, kind of like our generation, although Neil's a little bit older than me, and how we consumed comedy and how we consumed media, because it wasn't as easy as it is now. You know, he tells a story about Eddie Murphy getting unbanned in South Africa and being able to watch that. And he also shares a story about watching comedy at Colin D's, which was a strip club that would actually host comedy as well. We talk about representation. We talk about stereotypes. We talk about racist audience members. So yeah, this is quite an interesting little chat, and you can hear the rest of it on episode 3. Here comes Neil Green.
Stand-up comedy, people don't know this. Stand-up comedy was not mainstream accepted then like it was now.
Not a fuck, dude. Like, that's the weird thing. Like, because I grew up watching the stuff that was on Mnet. Like, they would put these specials on, like these 1-hour specials, like Chris Rock. They had Ellen DeGeneres. They had what's his name?
But I never had Mnet.
Yeah, so I mean, I assume it would have been slightly different for you. But for me, like, Chris Rock's the guy that, like, I always saw, like, I always loved, and I was like, fuck.
No,
like, I wish I could do that.
I was before that. We had straight audio of Bill Cosby and Richard Pryor at the time.
Oh shit.
And the first thing that we watched was Eddie Murphy's Raw. Not the first special, which was hilarious. The second one, Raw. We watched that like as a family, and it was the most hilarious
As a
shit.
family?
Yeah, for real, bro. It was like the most hilarious shit to me at the time.
I guess for white families, it's like Monty Python.
Yeah, I suppose it's a lot like Monty Python. And my father was like obsessed with. Anytime somebody came to visit, he'd be like, "Yo, have you seen Eddie Murphy's Raw?" And if they hadn't, we would watch that shit. But like, I watched that thing so many times, and so like that was the first video, and we got that video because it became unbanned as part of, during apartheid. That was banned. That was part of, it was one of the yeah, it was definitely. So when that got unbanned, that was the first time we got to watch stand-up comedy. So by the time, but I still did a lot of the audio. I remember Chris Rock's Bring the Pain.
Bring the Pain.
I had a CD of it. I never watched that. I had a CD of it. I have a DVD now that I bought many years later, but I listened to that whole thing. So, and like, I always loved comedy, and I should tell my friend's sister at that time, that's what I'm gonna do. Like, you know, one day I'm gonna do stand-up comedy. But there was a big gap with it. I didn't think that was real.
That's the thing, because you always, like, even me, like, I was like, I want to do this thing, but I could never do that.
There was no real way of doing it.
Like, how do you get there?
Yeah,
like,
there was no real avenues. Oh, but there was comedy just happening in Durban, but that was like Mark Banks, Colin D, John Flismith.
Colin D.
Yeah, it was. Even comedy was whitewashed at that time.
No, I know,
right?
but I'm just because I remember Colin D's as a strip club, but
yeah, but they had comedy there. I'm not saying I didn't go for the strippers.
I didn't even know those fuck that they had comedy there.
That's what I went for.
Holy shit!
I swear to you, this sounds weird. I would go watch the comedy and then leave. Like, I wasn't interested in seeing the strippers. The strippers were a bit like, I don't know. I'm not just a stripper shame, but it was like people's wives. Like the strippers at that time.
I kind of knew those strippers and stuff because I was young then, but they would. My mom worked at the bowling center there, and Colin D used to play Tim and bowling.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Like, yeah, like, and the weirdest thing is in the oil wrestling vibe, the guy who used to do, like, basically ran the shop at the bowling center, the guy who would drill your balls and stuff like that.
Right.
Great. Drill your balls. But that guy, he basically was the ref for the oil wrestling.
Oh, he was a man of many talents. No.
Moonlights again, fuck.
No, but for real, like, I can tell you Colin D jokes now. Like, I'm telling you, I know almost all Colin D's jokes, but like, I used to enjoy watching.
I had no idea that he was a comedian. Like, wow.
But I'm telling you, I used to sit and watch. Like, it was the most amazing thing to me to see people doing stand-up comedy live. And then, like, twice a year, they would do like proper stand-up comedy shows in Durban. But even then, there was like, the ICC was around, but they wouldn't have comedy at like, they wouldn't even have comedy at the Playhouse, dog. Like, I watched, the first Playhouse show I watched was Mark Lottery, and I walked out. I was so offended.
Oh yeah, because you.
Oh, so offended.
You hated the stereotereps.
Oh, I was enjoying the comedy, but there was a character they used to do.
Oh yes.
There was a colored lady that's a cashier, and I was like, nah, I'm done. I'm not watching this. I'm out. I love Mark now. So I like. Mark is one of my favorite comedians to watch now, but at that time I was like, nah, I'm not. Because again, comedy wasn't a space that my people were in. So I was basically sitting in this room full of people that didn't look like me. They were like nudging each other in the ribs and going, hey, yo, these colored guys are like that. You know, so like I didn't like that.
But do you not? I mean, do you not see that within your own comedy? Like when you perform, like, and you talk about colored things, and you perform to white audiences, and how does that, but how do you feel about
people
that
come up to me afterwards and feel comfortable saying the most
racist shit
to me because I was talking about it on stage now. So I wear that. I understand.
But how do you deal with that? Like,
you know, like the way I see it, if you can come up to me after a show and see something that I did and feel comfortable to be racist around me afterwards, because that happens.
Then you're just racist.
Then that means you were racist to start off with. like you didn't come there, saw me do comedy and went, oh, I'm racist now. Like I've had an epiphany. I've been sitting here and watching this colored guy, and now I realize that I'm racist. So I don't take responsibility for people's racism. I do, however, I do have to take responsibility for enabling racist behavior sometimes. And I do have to take responsibility for making it okay socially to talk about racist things, because I'm talking about racist things. I am.
Once again, that was Neil Green, and you can hear that full episode on episode 3. This next clip is from episode 7 with Lindy Johnson, and it basically explains how she got into stand-up comedy, how her tweets got her into stand-up comedy, and also how that stand-up comedy led her to some tough times, or at least just dying on a stage where nobody else dies on. So this is a fun little clip that highlights the experience of what it's like to be a stand-up comedian in South Africa. Here comes Lindy Johnson.
This girl messaged me on Twitter. She DM'd me and she's like, yo, I love your tweets. Have you heard of this place called Armchair? Because they still do comedy, and I saw you do comedy at the competition, because she also said with me. She's like, I saw you do it. If you're interested in doing comedy again, you should come to Armchair, because I know one of the guys who work there, Phil, and they were good friends. And then I was like, you know what? Yeah, this is exactly what I need. And she's like, I'll come pick you up at your house even. You need to do comedy. You need to be on the stage. I was like, okay, cool. I don't know you, but I'll do it. It's fine. And now she's my best friend.
Who was it?
It's Tanika. You don't know her.
Okay.
But
Wait,
shout out to Nika Case.
Does she do comedy?
No, she doesn't. She just loves comedy and she loves seeing people succeed.
Oh, we need I love people like that. We've
Yeah.
got a few of them in Durban, and they are the backbone of our audience.
Yeah, she loves and she understands it.
Yeah.
She really understands it well. So yeah, she took me to my first gig, and then it went well. It went well, and then the first time I died was at the box in Joburg.
You died at the box.
Yeah, you see?
How?
You see, for those listening, you don't understand. The box is not the easiest room,
it's
but
pretty
it's
fucking
a
easy.
warm room.
It's
so
nice.
warm, and people are so. The thing what happened was, it was a little people, and the power cut out.
Okay, and you were also relatively still new to the game.
Yeah, I was.
so-
It was like a few months in. So I died.
Was that the same gig? I performed there with candles. Was that the same
Yeah,
one?
I think so,
Was
probably.
I there? I don't know.
You were wearing a March Simpson t-shirt.
Oh, so then I was there.
Yeah.
My sequin one.
Yes. Very bright t-shirt.
Yeah, 'cause-
You guys can see the t-shirt through the podcast.
No, it's Marge's hair, and the whole hair is blue.
But it's in
Blue
sequins.
sequins, yeah. The whole t-shirt is blue sequins.
Yeah, so that's the first time I ever died, and it was devastating.
That must have been devastating, because you go to Joburg, you go to a room that's usually really dope.
I heard so much about the box. I heard so much. Everyone's like, "You're gonna love it.
It's
You're
the
gonna
best."
kill. That's gonna be your environment." And then I go and I die, and everybody was there. There were more comics than audience members. That kind of night.
And did you have any buzz behind you at that point?
Yeah, I had a little
So
bit.
people came and were like, "Oh, we're gonna watch her.
Yeah.
We've heard about her."
We're gonna see. I've heard so much about you. Like I got that before the gig as well. I've heard so much. I was excited to see what you do, and then I died. And then I walked straight out to the couches, and I cried. I cried so hard. And then I was on my phone googling to apply to universities like UNISA or anything.
It's like, this isn't for me.
Yeah, this isn't my life.
I mean, there is that old saying, like, don't let the good gigs go to your head and don't let the bad ones go to your heart.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's the key, because now you've obviously died and, had great shows, like, ever
Yeah, they
since.
balance out. My thing is, you could have 50 bad gigs and just that one great gig. You'll always chase
I
that.
don't know, if you have 50 bad gigs, you probably, like, if they're in a row, like, you've got a lot of persistence, I'll say that much.
I don't get, that's what I admire about people who say they've been doing comedy for 6 years, 5 years, and they weren't that good, but they still kept going. I'm like, I wouldn't be able to have that.
I feel like I'm in that position where it's taken me a lot longer than someone like you. Like, but I'm dedicated to it, and I'm working at it, and I'm trying to learn the craft, and like coming at it slightly more.
That kind of passion I admire the most, because it's just like, you have to push through so much.
Yeah, I'm just a
bullshit.
bit pig-headed though. Like, that's the thing. I'm one of those people that just, regardless of what anyone else says or whatever, I'm just going to do the thing I want to do, and like, maybe I'll be good at it, maybe I won't, but it's what I want to do. This is like when I used to skateboard. Like, I still could barely kickflip, but I did that for half my life. So,
Are you serious?
yeah.
That's impressive dedication.
Yeah, that's just, I don't know if that's dedication or just idiocy.
Well,
I'm not sure.
It's weird, because the things that I'm good at, I get bored with a lot of the time. So,
Okay.
like, I guess it's just that thing of being challenged.
Maybe I'm just like, I enjoy a self-wank like that. Just, okay, all wanks are self.
Well, no, you can wank someone else off. Like,
You
that
can.
is, yeah.
Oh, okay.
He
I
hasn't
swank.
learned that. Vitamin D.
So yeah, you died at the box. You've now since
with that week, did you go to Kitchener's or Poppy's and did you like recover?
Yeah, the next night I was at Poppy's and then I got my redemption and then I was fine. But I still, that box will always be with me. It will always be the death that I carry with me.
Have you gone back there? Have you killed since?
Yeah, I have. And it's fine, but I'm still, the box is still that room where I'm like, this bitch.
It's weird. Like, I love the box. I love Kitchener's. Those are like two of my favorite rooms. Like,
Kitchener's and Poppy's, I do well. It's fine. But the thing is, when I do well, it's out of my mind. Because then, for me, I'm like, when I do well, that's my job. That's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to make people laugh. I'm not going to pat myself on the back for it.
Well, I love you for saying that, because so many people like come off stage and go, "Oh, I killed," and like they've got this like big like thing about like doing well. It's like, no, that's the point. Like,
yeah,
that's what you're meant to.
Like,
be
it
doing.
feels good. I get it, especially like afterwards.
Oh, it's
but
such a rush.
I'm not gonna keep it with me. It's not something like now. It's like, oh, what am I gonna do next? Is my next gig? But like that death, it stays with me forever.
Yeah, some deaths definitely linger for a bit longer than they should. And I mean, I've had some times where it's just like, I should not be doing this. And then,
Always.
But the key is,
I've
like,
never met a comic who is just like, yeah, I'm gonna do this
forever.
and it's the best
Like,
thing ever.
I think
no,
the key,
comedy's
though,
a bitch.
The key is though to get back on stage as quickly as you possibly can. Like,
Yeah,
if you've died, like you have to try.
That's why I'm so glad, because right after the box, I did the next night Poppies.
Yeah.
So it was fine, but still.
And that was Lindy Johnson from episode 7. Up next, we have Miss Lee for Mark from episode 18, and also from being one of my oldest friends. I've got so much love for Lee. It's been wonderful to watch her journey, her take so many different paths and experiment and try so many different things. She's an incredibly talented human being. And this is a story about how she got fired from Saltwater Girl back when she used to be a culture writer, a music journalist, and they asked her to review S Club 7's one album, and it landed up getting her fired, and it landed up getting a lot of hate mail from the Saltwater Girl readership. So this is a really fun short story. I hope you enjoy it. Here comes Lee for Mark.
They weren't giving me like, I'm gonna say Deftones. I know you're a hater. No, Matt's a hater. Are you a hater?
No, I used to be a hater, but I've grown to appreciate Deftones. I've grown older.
Point of the story is they weren't giving me that; they're giving me Stained.
Yeah.
So I mainly wrote really scathing reviews, and I actually got fired from Saltwater Girl because I wrote a especially scathing review of S Club 7. And
I think I remember that. Like that was you were writing for Saltwater Girl when we knew each other. So
yes, it was. I basically, my review was listing all the people involved in the album and saying those are all the people that could have stopped this, because there were so many people involved in the album. And then they got hate mail about me, and I'm not sure Saltwater Girl ever, was expecting hate mail.
I mean, that's a good thing though. Typically.
Yeah, well, they said we're firing you because you've got too many opinions. So then I wrote like a farewell article, and kudos to them, they published it. But I wrote an article on being opinionated and why I thought at the time in my 24-year-old wisdom that being super opinionated was a very good thing, because at least you had the wherewithal to know how you felt about something. I'm not saying my opinions.
I was going to say, how do you feel about that now, though? Because I mean, with a bit of age and wisdom, because I mean, I definitely, if you look at Durban Is Yours and the shit we wrote there, kind of similar,
Yeah,
like
yeah. I mean, you definitely temper your shit with age and kind of, I guess, realize that you could hurt people or step on toes or offend or whatever.
And also that it's for your own ego that you do it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a soapbox and I wanted everyone to know how
cool you are
how
for
cool I was
being
and
able to like
how
be
strong my opinion was and rah, rah, rah. And I definitely don't think that I go around and do that anymore. But if you sit next to me at a dinner party,
you got some scathing opinions.
Like
yes. No, that's one of my favorite things about you is like we can just sit and like not engage with anyone else like the whole night and just be taking the piss out of everyone and everything that's going on. It's a lot of fun.
That hasn't changed. You don't want to change your core. I think that's the thing about aging is like there are so many things that you learn and change, but I maybe I didn't always like it, but I really like my core. And it's cheesy as it sounds, it makes you who you are. It is who you are. And we are all individuals. And so I'm glad that hasn't changed.
It's just how you express that core. And like, yeah, I do find like as you get older, your ego like takes over less. Like your
100%.
20s are such an ego-driven like
So
time.
ego-driven. I
Like-
can genuinely say that I don't care what people think about me now. Like I don't.
And that was Lee for Mark from episode 18. This next clip is from my interview with Nas Hussein, who was a good friend to me. We became really good friends after this conversation, especially. And I miss him a lot. He passed away from COVID earlier this year. But I think this little snippet gives a great representation of the kind of conversations that Nas and I had in general. It goes all over the show. He starts off like a little bit strange, talking about reptilian brains and all of that sort of thing before we get into talking about death and faith and the faith that he had in his family. Talk about hope and love and sharing. And yeah, Nas was a super philosophical dude and someone who I really love talking to. And there are so many quotable moments just in this little snippet, but you can listen to the full episode of the podcast on episode 19 to get a better feel for who Nas Hussein was. Here it comes.
Think about this. There is no guaranteed solution to the human race, right? We
No.
kill each other, we maim each other. We have there are lots of us, a higher percentage than we know, that have no empathy, right?
Yep.
They hang out with you and me, and they look like you and me, but they're reptiles wearing our skin, right? Like, and we've seen them. You've met people like this. I've met people like this.
Yeah, I mean, you don't actually mean reptiles, but I get you.
I mean, I call them reptiles because it's reptile brain,
Yeah.
our complex, right?
Yep.
Right. It's the part that says survival, right? The part of us, and you and I have it, and everybody has it.
But it's to different
But
degrees.
they live it. They live it on a permanent basis. It's like now if you interact with people like that, you know that they are effectively dangerous. Not because they even know that they are, and that's what makes them so fucking dangerous.
Yeah,
is that
because they don't even think they're dangerous.
they just think they're normal or special, one of the two, right?
They usually think they're exceptional.
Exactly, right? Totally. Well, we're veering into psychopath territory now.
Well,
right?
that's what I assumed we meant, but anyway.
Sure. I'm trying to include people in the spectrum that aren't just
Sociopathy
full-on
as well,
psychopaths.
yeah.
Exactly, right? Sociopath, narcissism, all the stuff on the spectrum. Now, we interact with those people. They're fundamentally dangerous to us. What can we do as humans to interact with them in a way that allows us to save ourselves? And I don't mean save ourselves just to survive. Not just to claw around eating and fucking and sleeping, but to live our lives with all the things that bring us joy, with fucking half-assed coffee that we're
Yeah.
drinking right now, and,
Hey,
and
you know
good
what?
movies.
It was still like I didn't enjoy the coffee that much, but it was still more enjoyable than not having a coffee.
Precisely, that's why we drank it, right? Like why we ordered it in the first place. We wanted the kick, and we're getting the kick, and it's not bad. You're right. I'm being an asshole, but like for us to enjoy our life, to live our lives, not just survive, we have to teach one another the most valuable lessons about ourselves. We have to teach each other hope, love, and I'm not saying that those things are guaranteed solutions to life, because I think this is where we veer into like the sort of yogi bliss
Yeah.
movement bullshit, where people who are actually psychopaths sit around doing yoga all day and then tell you about how it's changing their life for the better.
And it's also you have people who don't have much going on in their lives, then doing this thing and being like, "Hey, my life's amazing." It's like, no, your life was amazing without the yoga, yo.
but also, you breathe enough oxygen slowly enough, your metabolism is functioning at the right rate, and you feel calmer.
Yep.
Doesn't mean that the world is now okay. You just feel calmer.
You feel better about
And
it.
I think the people who start out with a low understanding of what's happening in the world, who then breathe a lot like slower, tend to forget about like, no, there's still poverty we need to fight, and there's still hunger that we need to solve, but now
Yeah, they become more accepting of the world. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
But you need to be more accepting of the world.
But also unaccepting of the bullshit of the world.
Because to truly accept something is not to acknowledge that it's fucked up as well, right? So I just think that what's important is the narratives we share about the world need to be a mix, right? They need to be a nice, and they are a mix. But like I look at our current way of addressing the world, and it's changing. So I speak about it now almost post-tense. But this current way is almost like this jokingly suicidal. Right?
Yes.
Like, so we have this thing, and
Well, that is because we're staring at a precipice. Like,
sure, but like, why does a precipice have to be the point at which we see? Precipice should be the point at which we leap, and instead we make it the point at which we fall, right? And for me,
well,
it's,
some people leap and they,
Exactly.
go on to live great lives a lot of the time.
And what I'm saying is we need to tell people more often about leaping.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we have to tell people more often about, like, there's a card in the tarot deck called the Fool. Right? And the Fool, I remember the image in the deck that I have at home. The image is a dude wandering on a cliffside, looking up at a flower that he's holding in his hand. And he's so distracted by the flower, he's walking off the cliff.
Yeah.
Right? And the idea of the Fool is to say, to be a fool. Not to laugh at the fool, but to be a fool. To be somebody who
be willing to fall.
Continuously gets distracted by the beauty of things, to learn a lesson when they fall. They are like, whoa, holy fuck, I fell, right? Because it brings them into an awareness that makes them understand that, like, maybe there is some beauty in the flower that I was staring at when I fell off the cliff. And how do I bring the beauty with me? How do I bring the flower with me on my descent into the darkness? Now, that's how I tend to try and approach things.
Okay.
So I believe very, very fucking hardcore serious in the threat of Skynet. I want you to understand, like, I'm worried about it. I think we got to get ready.
I think we're on the same, like, level here of, we both have this existential dread about the future, but also have, like, this hope that maybe we can, like, you know, survive it and not make that happen.
It's
and
the
like,
only solution. There is no other solution to staring death in the face
Than
than
hope.
to say, hey, death.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to see what that's about, which is why we made up as humans, why we
Well, hope
came
dies
up
last.
with
Like,
heaven and hell, right? We said either you fall
I
into
thought God came up with that.
either you fall into it by accident, right? Hell, right? Either you go like, I'm not gonna die, I'm not gonna die, I'm not gonna die, or I don't care, and then you die and it's horrible, right? Because you just didn't know it was coming, so you didn't prepare for it. That's what the idea is.
Yeah.
Or you prepared for it, right? Like, as in, you acknowledged it was coming, and you said, I'm preparing for this. I know it's coming. It will happen one day. I don't know what day. I don't know what time. I don't know what moment. I don't know how. And then it happens. And I think you go in...
So what you're saying is we shouldn't worry about Skynet.
I'm saying we should worry about Skynet, but we should prepare for Skynet, not worry so much that we don't prepare.
Oh no,
Right?
you
So
see, I'm putting my own biases here because that's the thing. Like, no, because I was just thinking, like, when you're talking about heaven and hell, there, it's like, yeah, but you're not really going to either. Like, you're preparing for.
But you're leaving behind heaven and hell when you die. You leave behind the heaven and hell for other people. You
Yeah,
talked about utopia.
but the thing is though, like, if you don't believe in heaven and hell, then you're fine. Like, that's the thing. Like,
Only
you're
if-
way better. Like,
only if you take the basic lame ass Judeo-Christian fucking version of those things, and,
Yeah.
and not even Judeo, because there's no hell in Judaism, but sort of.
Yeah,
There's
like,
punishment,
there's
but
Lucifer, like, yeah,
but it's
there's-
different, right?
it's-
It's
yeah.
less harsh.
it's
God
less.
is the one.
It's less fire and brimstone. Like, isn't it just non-existent?
It's non-existent,
Yes.
right? It's non-existence, which I think is great.
Which is also
Because
the
you won't
end,
even
which
know
is
that
also
you
the end
exist.
result of the Christian book, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, people don't get that. They're like, you go to hell for, like, well, Earth becomes hell
Right.
for 1,000 years, and then it's all gone. God destroys it all.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So-
this
but-
is,
but the
I love
point-
my mythology.
Yeah, so do I, right? I love this mythology.
Yeah.
There's a reason we came up with these stories, and there's a reason we tell these stories. And if we can extract the real value from the story, it's not about whether you're literally going there or not.
Yeah.
It's about, like, what is the thing that is in these that is valuable to us as human beings now while we walk around on the earth and we do live. I'm not worried about whether I'm going to heaven or hell.
No.
Like, those are abstract concepts that God will have to deal with. If it's a real thing,
Yeah.
right? If it's a real thing, I joked with my mom the other day, right? Because I have a tattoo. My mom is not super religious, but every now and then she frets. So she was like, kind of like, you didn't even ask me kind of thing, right? I had a tattoo for years, but whatever. We had this discussion. And I said, dude, the thing you're worried about is that I will not get into heaven. I said, but also remember that on the day of judgment, there's an intercession
Where you get to talk-
can speak to God
Yeah.
for me. I was like, you're not relying on your ability to intercede for me and my brother's ability, my father's ability, and my sister's ability. Please, all of you will pull this off. I'll be fine, right? And I wasn't just being a cunt, right? I wasn't just
You're
being
putting faith in them.
I was putting faith in them, right? Because I was saying your humanity matters to me. I believe in you. I love you. You love me. I know this will work out. Don't worry. Like, let's pull this off together. That's what we have to do for one another. Like, let's pretend for a second there is a heaven and a hell. Those people are going to pull that off just fine. Trust me. I fucking know them well enough.
And that was Nas Hussein from episode 19. So this next clip is from episode 38 with Charles Blichnout. We did it in his hotel room at the Durban International Film Festival, literally just before he had to catch a flight back to Joburg. It's a conversation that I don't think I was entirely prepared for. I should have been a bit more prepared for it, but Charles was such a gracious guest and gave so openly. Like, this little snippet you're going to hear, he talked about the intersectionality between the gay and black struggles, especially during apartheid. We talk about basically stories of true rebellion, Like, he mentions his one friend who was a drag queen who got into a confrontation with the Nazi and how that was on the front page of the papers. He talks about the artist's role in resistance. We talk about the corporatization of pride, and that all leads into how pop culture comes from counterculture and how that cycle is kind of an endless one. So here comes Charles Blichnote.
Do you think your growing up queer made you, like, obviously more likely to, like, you know, side on the black side of things when it came to, you know, apartheid?
Absolutely. There's no doubt that my queerness led me into a political space. I mean, I met at an early age in 1990 Simon Corley at the first Joburg Pride March organized by Nkoli and Bev Jitsi and Edwin Cameron. And as AIDS hit, you know, when you grow up and sex is illegal, that's beautiful, fertile ground for disease to spread and viruses to grow and self-hatred and body shaming and all of the things attached to sex that are then you can't even talk about them. So the epidemic hit us hard, and Simon was, who himself passed away because of the virus, Simon was doing men's sexual health projects in Soweto across the East Rand. And I started documenting these on the TV show, and I started doing a series called Breaking the Silence, where it was still so stigmatized, and it was the queer men who were doing something about it and mobilizing and being visible about it.
So that's always just, I mean, but we look at history, it's always kind of been that way, that if you are oppressed, like you have, well, yeah, you obviously have to fight back.
So it's the intersectionalities. I mean, Simon said it in that famous speech before the start of the first Pride, that I am black and I am gay, and please, those in the ANC want me to say I am black first, and those here in the movement of queers want to say I'm gay first, but I will never be either first. I'm all those things, and this is a key moment in our intersectionality studies, where we have to accept that there are multiple oppressions heaped upon black life, and Simon was a very, very big influence, and later Stephen Cohen would be. I was a terrible rebel, and I took a lot of drugs, and one of the people that really helped me out of that was the performance artist Stephen Cohen. I would go with him and help him with his work. I've actually encouraged him to drag for the first time. I remember one day I took him to Fort Klapperkop in Pretoria, where there was supposed to be an art exhibition there, but the AVB claimed the space for a centenary celebration of Paul Kruger's birth or death or something. And we literally marched all the way up to these guys with swastikas on their arm. This monster drag queen and this junkie white faggot. You know, I mean, this was not for sissies. I did tell the drag queen, look, this thing is going to be on the front page of the Sunday Times, and it was. Him confronting this face-to-face with a Nazi. These were real contestations, you know, shopping malls where bombs were going off. The violence was everywhere, and the struggle for the art that resisted all of these oppressions was a real thing, and a real endangering thing. Those artists made difficult work.
And nowadays we're facing a different problem in that it's those artists and that art has become commercialized. It's become marketable. It's become like, you know, what big brands do essentially. And how do you feel about that? You know, about queer culture actually coming into, like, Pride in the last month was just this massive, massive thing that every brand was involved in, but it feels disingenuous and it feels like it's been co-opted.
I sat with Simon in the committee meetings of GLOW, who organized that march, and watched the white men, bankers, middle-class white men, slowly hijack Pride. They said it was for reasons of safety, that they took it further into the northern suburbs, which took it away from its historical site. I've just actually done a podcast for a French project on the importance of Hillbrow and the Skyline Bar, where we met and organized and met partners interracially. The march was co-opted. It got a VIP party, which meant that the poorest of the poor, the people who really mattered, had to take further money, that they were already spending more money on transport because it had been moved into the northern suburbs. And then it became this massive apartheid where white people would go to the VIP party and black people would braai on the lawns of Zulek, where we congregated. I never attended any of those marches in the north. And what happens when things become too commercialized? Everything is entropic. the rape and murder of lesbians meant that the 1 in 9 campaign, who had fought so hard around Kwezi, the woman we called Kwezi Fizeka, who had been allegedly raped by the former President Zuma, they demanded that the march not just celebrate, but also acknowledge the murder and rape of lesbians. And when the march wasn't willing to put it on the agenda in any meaningful way, they lay down in the road and stopped the march. The result was some very, very angry lesbians who almost drove over them, and they got beaten by their own people. And that was the end of Joburg Pride, the oldest pride march on the continent. But what happened next was Kwezelomso Mbandisayo and Sigitlani Pamodi and a group of young queers began Joburg People's Pride, and they restored it to its original roots in Hillbrow and put lesbians first. But before that bread, if we can't eat, we can't fuck.
Yeah, amen. Mm. So, yeah, culture becomes counterculture, becomes culture, becomes counterculture. I mean, you've probably seen that a million times. One thing I do want to ask, though, is how...
All pop, and I dare you to find examples that defy this. There might be some. All pop begins as counterculture, as opposite to the culture that is the mainstream culture. It's always a defiant thing. Kwaito might have become the pop of the liberation, but it was an underground hillbrow form coming out of razzmatazz, coming out of townships. It was not something that was mainstreamed. It's only when the capital market sees that, oh, look, there's the pink rand, and oh, look, look at Hollywood now. It's a black endeavor where now these capitalists are seeing how much money they can make out of black life. Yes, this is how culture operates. This is how pop culture forms, and the bubble pops and a new one starts.
If you want to hear more from Charles Blichnote, check out episode 38. This next clip is from episode 49 with Luisa Madinga, and I was asking him about his philosophy of nobody cares, work harder, which he always says in his Instagram stories. And he explained what he meant by that. I'm not going to get into it here. He's going to tell you in just a second. We also discuss what making it means. And he openly shares a lot of his insecurities because he's someone who has risen very quickly. And he's worried about his ability versus, the situation that he's in. So he talks very openly about that. And I think there's a lot that we can learn from Loiso Madinga.
I'm a very positive person.
You are. You can be, especially online. One of the things you're always saying is nobody cares, work harder. Does that not feel like a way to get exploited?
I think the word harder is also misinterpreted because sometimes it's about learning how not to be screwed over, and people aren't willing to work on other parts of their careers. So people go, oh, I don't get enough opportunities in this. So I'm not saying work hard as in like write more and more jokes. I go, okay, maybe you just need to work harder on your image, or maybe you need to work harder on creating spaces for yourself. Okay. Maybe there's so many ways to work harder. But people just think it means grind harder, work later, and then it's like, no.
And that's not healthy.
That's not healthy because then it's repeating the same thing over and over to get the same results. So work harder is sometimes you just got to be more than one person for a part in your career. Yeah. So just do that because no, it's weird. Once you start doing certain things for yourself, somebody arrives
and says, "Can I do this for you?
Can I do this for you?" Yeah.
So you're in that position now.
I'm having more people approach me now at this point and saying, "Let me be your person in this and that or whatever. Let's work together in this and that."
Is that gratifying? Does that feel like, is that like a thing where you feel a bit more like you've made it?
Made it is such a weird concept.
I know.
I think made it for me is the opportunity to do more work. And when people want to do work with you, that's a great sign for me. So when a photographer goes, yo, we need to do a shoot together of something, that for me is like, oh, we get to create something else. It's not, oh, we get to be glamorous.
Yeah.
I go, oh, we get to be creative. I hope we can do something that creates a new piece of art or whatever, and we put that out. So because it's comedy and performance is a lifelong thing, so there's no need to think that you've made it, because also you can, if Brad Pitt doesn't work for the next 20 years, Brad Pitt is done. It's not like, we're not sitting there in 20 years going, Brad Pitt's doing well, huh? You know what I mean? It's like he still has to put out fucking work.
Well, of course.
So it's the opportunity to work that's important.
So you don't see like a point in your career where you might just feel like, cool, I'm done. I've done enough now. You feel like you're gonna carry on? Because I've chatted to some people and they're like, yeah, you know, like I've already got so much in me, and then I'm like done with this thing. Whereas I'm like, I can see myself on stage when I'm 80. You know?
Yeah,
like,
me too.
I feel like that's when I'm gonna be like good.
Yeah. Like I think that's the thing when people like young, especially the younger guys, which like it's just not knowing what the industry is, and like it won't be long before they realize
how long it takes.
How long it takes to do anything.
How long have you been in this for?
So I've been doing it for 7.5 years now.
Shit, dude, your career is great. We're 7.5 years
Yeah,
in.
no, it's moved fast. I won't lie.
I thought you were like 10 or so years
See, that's
in.
where my anxiety comes from, because I know, and you and I know where I am in my career.
Yeah.
Where
it's pretty far along.
On paper,
to
it looks it is far along, but in terms of the craft, I know where I am, and I am 5%. And I'm being generous when I say I am 5% of the comic I wish to be one day.
5%.
Yeah, bruh. I can poke holes in everything.
Wow, I would say like I'm 20% of the comic I'd like to be, and I'm a shit comic. So like, I don't know, like 5% is underselling yourself.
No, man, I just love. When I watch Stuart Lee's comedy. He's a god, bruh.
Like what that guy does,
it's insane.
It's unreal, dude. Like, I'm so glad you brought him up, because that dude I can watch forever and just go, how are you doing this?
He is so good. I don't laugh
because you're in awe.
I'm just in awe. I'm literally just watching. I'm just like, I'm enjoying this so immensely, but laughter just is not enough.
And he likes dividing the crowd. Like,
yes, he's. Oh man! So I go.
I get you.
That's where comedy can be. Where am I?
Nowhere near that.
I'm so far. And there are moments where like I'll have like one joke in an hour where I go, I wish I was that joke for an hour. You know what I mean?
I know how you feel there.
So
man.
until I can be in an hour, I am a 30-second joke. So I am at 5% of the comic I want to be.
Fair enough. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I get you. Well done. You did the maths on it and everything. Oh man.
So the anxiety comes from that, is to get attention at a point where you're like,
don't feel like you're good enough.
I don't feel I'm good enough for that attention. But I have to also go, the world is huge, no one knows you, keep working.
It's also, there's a lot more people who aren't on your level who do think they are and are pushing for it and get those opportunities because they think they are.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like The Emperor's New Clothes perfectly describes the entertainment industry a lot of the time.
Yes.
You know, like, it's more about like the perception. Like, people can be naked and everyone's not saying anything.
Yeah.
You know? Like, always are walking the streets and everyone's like, yeah.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of that, especially with social media allows you to get the fame and
people never even have to see you do comedy and they can think you're a great comedian.
Yes. Yeah. And I've watched people get opportunities they're not ready for, and I feel sorry for them, because I go, you obviously have talent, it's
not refined yet.
You're pulled. You also feel compelled to be to be in certain spaces because the industry tells you to be there. Where it's like, if you just took your time to learn your craft, you could be really great because you're great at getting the attention. So if you work on the craft, by the time you're ready to give people who are willing to give you that attention, you can retain and maintain a really great career.
And they can be your audience.
And they can be your audience for life.
Whereas
but
people
now,
see you online and they're like, it's funny.
And they love you and they come watch you and it's like, oh, I can't do this again. It was nice seeing them live, but would I come again? No. It's unfortunate because we forget that these are lifelong pursuits.
Yeah.
Lifelong. And so...
And 10,000 hours, 10 minutes at a time.
Do you know what I mean? It's pretty fucking difficult. So... Yeah, man, it's just I don't judge them too hard now. I did before. I don't judge them too hard now because I understand the pressure of it.
Once again, that was Louisa Madinga from episode 49. And up next is Ebenezer Dibakwane. Now, this was episode 53, and this was a very, very, very real chat. In general, we spoke about a lot, but this snippets that I have here, I think it's one of the longest snippets that I have today. It's a good showcase of a lot of what we talk about on this podcast, because we talk about religion, we talk about losing your faith, we talk about stand-up comedy, we talk about Ebenezer's relationship with his family, and we talk about him living on the streets, about him being homeless and staying on people's couches whilst he was performing comedy, how he won the Comics Choice Award whilst he didn't have a place to stay, whilst he didn't have a home, whilst he was playing gigs dirty and grubby and going home with girls as a way to make sure he had a place to stay. So we chat about that right now. We chat about quite a lot on this podcast. I highly recommend you go and check it out. It is episode 53. But here comes Ebenezer Debukwane.
This is the problem. This is the problem for me with comedy. This is my issue. My issue
Is that you have to have a brand?
That's my issue.
Same. And
I'm not talking about as in a brand of comedy or a style, or I'm talking about as in you have to market it. You have to fucking, and I'm like, you know what I used to look like, bro? I used to have like a fucking mane.
More than this.
It was crazy weird. It was like this fucking
I remember. Yeah, more dreadlock to you kind of love.
Broken pieces. I've got a few now. It's like messed up. It was like messed up. My beard's more like ragged generally. And I should just wear grunge. And I even used to joke about it. I'm like, oh, man, I don't know what you think. Like, didn't I post this guy at the road? I'm like, yes, you did. Thank you for the $5. Appreciate it. Appreciate. And I say, and I talk about how broke I am, and I'll be like, ever been so broke that you're shopping in the great like, just like looking past, just like this, one day.
Let's go Sam.
Let's go Sam, son. You know what I'm saying? And then I'll be like, what I hate though coming off of the stage is like a lot of white girls, especially, it's kind of like, wow, I love it, dirty grungy look, what inspires it? Like, poverty, bitch. Like, I'm poor. This is not a choice, alright? It's not fashionable. But the thing about it then, as I spoke about it then to be rated, but there was a physical story I was telling. What my dream was, and I managed. My dream was to make it. And I thought, no, I didn't make it, but I mean,
in reference to where you were.
In reference to where other comics were, and by the fact that I got my Comics Choice. Yeah. It was always one of the proudest things, that I got my Comics Choice Award while, like, I just came off the streets. So basically, all the work that I did dirty and not looking a certain way, all of that, I did on the streets, looking the way I do. And that's what my message was at the time. Like, you can make it anyway. And then the world taught me, like, nah.
You gotta look the part.
You gotta look the part.
So what do you mean by...
It makes people feel uncomfortable.
What do you mean by on the streets? You were...
Like, I was on the streets, and then I'd be banking, I guess. Slept at a friend of mine, Tabi Somfrongo, comedian. I slept at his place for a while. I slept at... But again, I slept everywhere. I also slept on the streets sometimes.
How did that happen? What happened there? Like,
I quit school and my parents were like, okay, buddy, all right, big man. And I was like stubborn, so I was like,
I'm gonna make it on my own.
I'm gonna make it.
Fuck, dude. And I mean, you're making it now.
Slowly but surely, yeah.
But what, like, fuck, dude. I genuinely can't imagine what that's like. I mean, I've slept outside like twice in my life when I ran away from like home, like from my mom and stuff. Like, and that's, when I was young, and also it was literally under the building that we lived in, so it wasn't like a real experience. Like, and even that was terrifying. So how do you do that?
If you were like me, I just lost my religion, so
okay.
I was an evangelist, remember?
Yeah.
And then everything crumbled down. I literally masturbated for the first time when I was 19.
Holy shit. That you must have shot so much cum.
Yeah. It was a mess.
That must be the fucking...
It was a mess, bro. Like, I couldn't... I fell.
19
I fell.
Oh
God. My dick... No, bro. It was projected. What is it like? Yeah, I was thrusted through the air.
Did you lose weight?
Yeah!
But you must have lost like 2 kgs that day, bro.
Yeah, man. was crazy. And my balls, I thought my balls were bigger than they actually were. Clearly, yeah. But yeah, and then, like, you know, like, there's a lot of things that I was disillusioned about, and I was heartbroken. And then I went the complete opposite way. Like, instead of, like, learning what is right and wrong for myself, then I said, no, fuck it, then. Fuck it. Start having, like, a bunch of sex, you know what I mean?
Which isn't wrong.
Like, drinking everything, all the time.
Also not wrong.
I was like, fuck school.
These aren't moral issues.
No, not wrong. I'm just saying, like, as in
societal ills.
What I thought was wrong.
You went.
So I went and I did them in excess because I'm like, this is not. I only thought that was wrong because of God, and if it's not, then fuck it. So then I went in excess, exactly, and I drank. And I did everything to that, everything. I just quit school. I'm like, fuck school. Why the fuck am I still in school? The only reason I even wanted to have a degree,
high school or
university. Yeah, the only reason I wanted to have a degree was because I wanted to have a family. And I wanted to be responsible in that construct. I'm probably not gonna have a fucking family.
Yeah, I'm not.
So fuck it.
I might adopt a kid, but that's about it.
You know, you might adopt that way. Yeah, I know that. Morally, you know, if you heard about antinatalism.
Yeah. I've been on that train since I was quite young. Like,
that makes so much sense.
Yeah, there's so many kids in this world, like, who need a home, and like bringing another kid into the world
is morally wrong. That is wrong.
Yeah,
but I might do it anyway. To be honest,
by accident or
I don't know, man. I just think it's like a narcissistic.
You want your seed to pass on. So your rebelliousness landed you on the streets, and like,
I quit school.
Were you not feeling like, when you had to sleep on the streets, like what the fuck am I doing? Like,
I never thought what the fuck. I only thought what the fuck am I doing if I'd only made like 300 and I drank it all. And I'm like, I could have probably paid for, you know, a small place or backpackers for like 150 something.
So were you paying, sleeping at people's houses, and then also like when you got paid decently, you would like,
just always, no, I hardly ever paid for a place to sleep. I'd always buy beers.
And so you can share them with people, or so that you can also drink? Bit of both.
Yeah.
Self-serving.
So like, dog, I'm coming through the 12 case. We have a 12 pack.
So that's your rent for the night.
But then we drink and I'm fucked up. You know what I'm trying to say? And, you know what I mean? And then you take a shower. Because I have to leave in the morning like at 8 because they're going to...
And they go to work at like...
And you just roam around. And those are my best comedic years. Because all I could do to fight this insanity while I'm at the park was write. So you literally like waiting for people to come back from work. And then you get on stage. And my thing was like, guys, I'm actually homeless. They're like...
Because that's the thing. People used to crack jokes about it to me. And like, I was just like, that's fucking mean. Like, they would say, like, Ebony is a homeless, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, fucking dickheads.
I was actually. And I'd even say to her, like, honeys, like, to ladies, like, on stage, like, kill. Like, guys, this is not a joke. You know what I mean? Like, anyway, then carry on. Kill, make them forget about it. Go sit at the bar. Like, this closing joke was like, women shouldn't care about, like, I mean, men shouldn't have fucking any right to, I haven't done a job in a long time, but men should have no say in how a woman, expresses herself sexually. That's disgusting. That's fucking weird, bro. Like, dude, mind your own dick. Like, ladies, I'm tired. And I don't want to sound like one of those mansplainers or someone who's like, you know, like a faux ally. I'm just saying, personally, and I apologize if it comes across like that, but personally, if I was a woman, I would have all the sex I wanted. I'd have all the sex. Yo, dude, I would go on a sex tour, start off in like Klerksdorp, go down to Cape Town, Kuruman for a while, finish off in Venda, you know what I'm saying? Finish off on a big bang, that's what the line I used to say. And then,
hey, all jokes are hard to remember.
Yeah, I'm just saying I used to finish up on the big bang. I saw it like a bit of the Venda stereotype.
Yeah.
And then,
okay.
I'd be like, yo, man, I'll have sex. I'll suck everybody's dick. Just to prove a point, I'd suck everybody's dick and post videos about it. I would suck a dick anywhere, in an airplane. In fact, yo, ladies, if you want to go to the toilet now and suck someone's dick, go, dude, it's your business.
I know where this is going.
My name is Ebenezer Diwakoni and I'll be waiting in the toilet. Right? Cool. Whatever.
Does it ever work?
Never. It never worked. Not that I blowjob. Someone will be like, I'll be on the way to the toilet to go pee. I was joking, obviously. I'm going to the toilet. Like, I guess I'll see you in like 3 minutes. And I'm like, are you serious? Because No? Alright. But anyway, I'm just saying, like, you know, then they come to me afterwards at the bar, like, are you serious about it as a joke? I'm like, nah, that's real. I do. He's like, no, what plan are you gonna make, man? Maybe I was gonna try hit up my brother. You know, listen, you never know how a night ends. I mean, you just sat down next to me and having a conversation. You might find me attractive enough to leave it. Sometimes it worked.
Fuck, dude, that's
so
true.
there was random ladies gave me bedding. Sometimes out of like 2-3 month relationship where I have a place to sleep with some of these ladies.
You know, like some woke like women are just going to hear that and just go, "Fuck this motherfucker, using woman for a place to stay." Like,
yeah. No,
Twitter, like
that is what happened, though. I'm being honest about what happened, you know. And but some of those relationships were real, you know what I mean? It's just, but that's what it was. It was like, for me, it was in my mind as a transaction. If she found me attractive, and I'd say it straight, I wouldn't. It's not like
you provided value. You provided value.
Yeah. Like, I'll make you laugh.
Good looking dude, like, you know, things seem.
Thank you.
Seen with views, like, you know, not a bad thing for a woman.
So you know, that's how I was hoping, you know. Yeah, so like a lot of that shit like happens, and then you come and you start being more comfortable and you think about things that you can't. Like, for instance, I can't walk more than 2 kilometers anymore. Yes, back then I used to walk from, you know where kitchen is in reference to, yes. Can you see?
Oh,
so Melbourne is over there.
That's like nearly 20 k's.
No, I'd say about 7, 8, 10.
Okay, my reference in Joburg's fucked then.
Yeah, because Melbourne is like
I know
right
where Melville is. I know where Parktown is. I know
yes, so it's like, it's not that far, but I mean, it's like 10 k's, 9 k's, I'd say. Maybe even 7.
See, we used to do that a lot in Durban, walking home from like the jaw, but that was more just, you know, because we had spent all our money.
Yeah, but for me, it was like every day. Because I had nothing else to do except comedy. So every day, every day, I'd wake up from whoever was housing me the day before, and then wake up, because they have to leave, right?
This sounds like being on tour, but like, just without the, like you're being on tour in your own hometown, like essentially. If you want to check out more of that episode of the podcast with Ebenezer Dibakwane, go check out episode 53. This next clip is from episode 61 with Push Push, aka Nikki Saint Bruce. And in it, we discuss basically how embarrassed she is, and even me, of my old self, but how embarrassed she was of a lot of the stuff that she did when she was younger, and how getting into sex work actually helped to radicalize her a lot more. And these days, she is a much more self-aware person and someone who is super political. So you'll hear about the origin of all of that right here with Nikki St. Bruce. When the fuck did you get so political?
When I became a sex worker and had to deal with the oppression that comes from that. I was dumb before. I was just stupid. I was so fucking dumb, and I didn't know anything, and I didn't have the ability, I had the ability, but I wasn't using critical thought. I was just taking what I heard and running with it because I was comfortable. It made me feel comfortable. It's not nice to feel like this. It's not nice to to hate everybody. I don't like it. I miss being stupid, but I know that I can now never go back there.
Yeah, because, I mean, I think that was stuff that, I mean, you literally used to get criticized for it. Like, I know at one stage you had cornrows and stuff, and you did a photo shoot and that. And so people called you out back in the day pretty hectically for your privilege, for, you know, your whiteness, essentially, and your lack of understanding of the world around you. And it's been wonderful to actually watch you grow into this person who's almost more political than the people who called you out back in the day. So,
you know what, Bob? I'm like ashamed. I'm ashamed of the way I used to think, and I'm ashamed of the person who I used to be, and I'm ashamed that I ever had the hubris to, even in the first place, not question my reality and other people's realities, and how, you know, all the things that my privilege afforded me that I never thought about. It makes me cringe. I want to die sometimes. But then I think, okay, well, the only way I can take myself out of that hole is just by filling it with all the good things, where I just have to fight and fight and fight until I'm in a place where, not that I can fight to a place where I'm never not embarrassed of how I used to be, but I think that one day maybe there will be a time where I can say, okay, I think I've worked hard enough, and I think I'm ready to forgive the girl that I used to be.
I fully understand that. Just as someone who's obviously still misogynistic because I'm a man living in a patriarchal society.
We all
etc.
have deeply internalized misogyny. Even me sometimes. I'm like, I'll say something and then I'll be like, did I really just fucking say that?
Yeah. But the thing is, I just look back at my past. I look back at my 20s and I cringe and I just want to I just want to punch that guy so fucking badly. And I'm surprised.
I can't believe I never get punched. I can't believe I didn't get punched.
Yeah. So, but that's the thing, at least, that is kind of the thing I think that happens is as you get older, you start looking at yourself and you start seeing just how terrible you have been and you get embarrassed and you don't want to be that person anymore. And so well, maybe some people, I think, veer more into it. They're like, they make it a source of their pride because they want to be different to everyone else and they don't want to admit that they're hurting people and they don't want to feel that way or whatever. But in general, I think as you get a little bit older and you start looking at your actions and your place in the world and just how terrible you've been, you want to make amends for it. You want to be different. You want to be a better person than, when you were in your 20s. But it does, I don't know, do you ever, are there ever some things that you're just I don't know if I can ever make up for that? You don't have to say what, but
there's probably loads of things. I don't want to think about them individually right now because I'll probably become inconsolable. Very PMSy here.
Sorry.
But there's definitely things, there's okay, it's not so much things as arguments that I was involved in where I was speaking from a place of absolutely no knowledge. Sure. And what it's done to me is now I just will never, ever even try to have a conversation with somebody about something that I don't know. It's impossible for me to do now because I've embarrassed myself so much in the past. But obviously, there's something wrong with 20s Nikki where she just loved the sound of her own voice. Just had to always get into the Facebook arguments. Why? Who knows? Because no one even fucking cares.
Because you need the attention, because you're insecure inside. Same as all of us.
But now I'm like, please, no, miss me the whole time with all of that. I'll never ever try and speak on something that I don't know about. And if I'm ever trying to speak to someone who's doing that, I try and have a chat with them rather than tearing them down. And that conclusion I came to after watching a video. It was actually a TED talk, and I'm ashamed to say that a TED talk, changed my perspective or gave me a paradigm shift. But it was the daughter of that Westboro Baptist Church.
Oh yes, she's great though.
Her?
I mean, I haven't seen her TED talks, but she's been on various different things, and I appreciate what she's doing.
Because that's how she got woken up. I'm sorry to say woken up, but that's how she got. That's how she woke up one day and went, "Whoa, where the fuck am I?" And because a man on the internet very nicely tried to not call her a bitch and a cunt and a stupid dumb hoe. He actually sent her things and little readings that she could do or papers that she could read, other perspectives that she could mull over in her spare time when she wasn't picketing outside dead soldiers' funerals. And she was obviously bored enough of her situation or over it enough that she read them and she went, whoa. Am I in the right place right now? And it must have been insanely hard for her because that was her whole family and that's the only people she ever knew, and she got out of that. So if she can get out of that, then we can help internet racists not be internet racists. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, but like you just said, the way she was brought into the fold, to use a Christian term, was by someone being nice to her. And the things that we do online, and I say we, and I mean me, and I do mean a lot of the people listening to this, is pile in on people and be shitty to them. And
look, what I'm not advocating for is being nice to online racists. That is absolutely not what I'm saying. But if someone's really actually stupid, then I'm going to try at least to engage and to try to get them out of that stupidity, because I really think that look, I'm not the smartest person alive, Bob, but I can still wrap my head around, basic concepts.
You got some brains on you though.
Maybe not. We'll see. But, what I'm trying to say is I was never the smartest person. I don't understand all the terms that people use, and I'm not down with the jargon, and I may not be the most eloquently spoken person, but I can feel if something's right or wrong now inside of my body. I can feel it.
And that was Push Push, aka Nikki St. Bruce, from episode 61. This next clip is from episode 63 with Annie Brookstone. And it starts off with us chatting about how she got into sex writing for FHM and how she saw it as an opportunity to teach men to be better at sex and to respect women. And then that would obviously have a better impact on the woman that those men were having sex with. It also led to me eventually bringing up this one essay that she wrote for a blog, or for, I think it was for her blog, about anal sex, that I thought was incredibly personal and emotional and honest. And it just was a very different way of writing about sex. You know, it was very personal. And yeah, this all led to her basically accepting herself and what she likes. And I think there's a lot that you can learn from this little clip, as well as the entire episode. So here comes Annie Brookstone.
Which is kind of also how I got into the sex writing gig. So I had mentioned to an acquaintance working at FHM at the time, like kind of as a joke, that I really wanted to be a sex writer, that was my next thing. And maybe a few weeks later, they contacted me and they said, okay, now's your chance. I spoke to Brendan Cooper, the editor, and we want you to write a sex feature for us.
What went through your mind then? Like, were you like, I don't know enough, or like, you know, how do I write this?
I was a giant slut. I knew enough.
Okay.
No, I just, for me, like, FHM was the perfect starting point to write about sex. And like, I can imagine people are listening to this and rolling their eyes because you know what the FHM readership is like. And I was just like,
I was FHM readership at one point, and those sex columns gave good advice sometimes. Like, genuinely, there's things I remember from then that girlfriends have been thankful for, like 10 years later. So
sure, but I think the thing is, they also sometimes gave really bad advice. And like,
yes,
that is the thing. You could almost recognize the moves that somebody was pulling that they'd read in last month's FHM.
Like the like alphabet trick and stuff like that.
Exactly. Or the 9 shallow thrusts and then 1 deep one followed by everyone knows that one.
Once again, useful when you're young, like I think if FHM's target audience is 16 to 18-year-old boys, then like it was the perfect magazine. But once you were a bit older than that, like the information definitely wasn't that useful.
True, but I also think that, when I at least got into it, it was like such a kind of cookie cutter approach to sex. It was like, this 5 moves to drive her wild. And it just assumed that every woman responded the same to everything. Yeah. So I went into it thinking, fuck, I have this readership of these, like, I would always imagine like some guy in his first year in university in res, like, in like maybe a conservative town, like maybe Potch. Like, this is what I was imagining, like the almost like lowest common denominator. And I was like, how am I going to turn this boy into a sex positive, feminist, like cool man who respects women, isn't afraid to ask what partners need. Like, this is what I wanted to do. And I was just like, at last.
And the editorial let you do that, obviously.
They gave me complete freedom. After I submitted that one article for them, they called me into their offices and said, hey, we'd like to have you on retainer writing for us.
Wow. Okay, like people listening might not know like how big that is. Like, to just be put on retainer after one article is pretty gangster.
Right, and they're like, you have complete freedom. You can write about anything you like. Just send us a sex feature every month.
And so the adventure began from there.
Yeah, at that point, I was writing under a pseudonym because a big
family, friends.
Exactly. I had a teenage brother at the time. I mean, he's 21 now, so like this like kid in my family who I didn't want his friends to be like, oh, I read about your sister's sex life the other day.
Was that a concern early on? Like, what were the concerns early on when you started out sex writing? Because obviously it's an interesting thing to put yourself out there in that way. Obviously, you're doing it for good intentions. You want to teach people things. You want to share information, and it's information that needs to be shared. But on a personal level, there's a lot that must be going on inside.
I think, like my brief from FHM was just make people laugh and make them horny. Make them hard and make them laugh. And, I didn't want to go out there pretending that I was like some sort of like sexologist or sex expert. Like, essentially, I want to go and say, these are my experiences as a 20-something-year-old who's fucking a lot. These are things that I've found. Obviously, if there was like research to back it up, great. But my thing was never to be pretending that I'm some sort of expert that I'm not. It was like, this is a learning experience for everyone. So here is something I've gone through, and this is what I've learned from it, and what you could possibly learn from it. And that basically put me in a position where I didn't want anyone to read a story and go, oh fuck, I think that's me. I didn't want everyone who I've had sex with to be looking for like me, I don't know, talking about how great it was in the next issue of FHM.
Or how bad it was.
Exactly. Which is more often the case.
I mean, I can understand that. Like, just throughout my own history, like, there's been some times where it just hasn't been a good time. But that's why, like, what you do, I feel, has been so valuable, like, especially for me. And it's also one of the things that, like, I really admire and appreciate is how personal and open you can be with your writing. This is awkward for me to bring up, but your piece on anal sex was like something that like resonated with me. Like, just the like personal side of it more than the actual like anal sex side of it was like, it was emotive, and it was something that was like shit, like damn.
I'm blushing so hard right now.
I'm sorry, like as I said, like it's like awkward for me to bring up, but it was just like one of those things that like after I read that, like I genuinely like admired you a lot more, because it was such a personal thing, and it was such a brave thing from my perspective to bring up to like a general public. So how do you do that? Like, how do you go like, I'm going to share the story with everyone, especially once you started doing it under your own name?
I think what it was is that like it's a learning curve for everyone, like I said. And like the more I learned about myself, the more I kind of realized that I am a bit of a freak. I am very kinky. I am I don't want to say I think about sex all the time, because sometimes I think about snacks. But
so Korn's Adidas song there can be either or.
Right. But I guess what it was for me is that I realized that, I'm not trying to titillate people. Like, I'm not trying to be like this, like, I don't know, sex siren or some sort of like, I just want to speak openly and frankly about shit in a way that like some pervy dude isn't going to message me and be like, oh, I'm wanking over your content right now. But at the same time, somebody can go, oh, fuck, that resonates with me and that's real for me. Because, like, especially, with things like anal sex or kink or BDSM, like, people do still, like, feel like there's a lot of stigma around it, and they do still think it's, like, this, like, really, like, risque. I think a big thing for me, like especially in terms of kink and BDSM, was like people's ideas of it were informed by like basically Rammstein music videos and and CSI death scenes, like CSI crime scenes.
Yeah.
Like it's always just like this, like really like, I don't know, intense, damaging,
negative, yeah,
risky, yeah, whatever. And I just wanted to go, hey, I'm a normal ass person. in so many ways. And this is like an element of my life that feels as normal to me as anything else.
But it's just societal judgments, obviously, because people feel, I think kinks are like, people responding to it negatively are usually somewhat turned on by it. Like, that's my understanding of things, and they don't know how to, bring it up within themselves almost. It's like people don't know how to deal with like how uncomfortable some stuff can make them, like, and how, yeah.
No, I completely agree with you. And I think for me, when I had decided that, I wanted to use writing about sex to kind of like normalize things, and I don't want to say educate people, but, make people think critically about it and actually make decisions and not just like default to whatever normal is, default to whatever feels most acceptable. And I think doing that behind a pseudonym kind of reinforces that idea that there's something to be scared of.
And that was Annie Brookstone. If you enjoyed that little snippet, go check out the rest of the conversation on episode 63. This next clip is from episode 65 with Majosi, and it's him talking about this moments that we shared together that actually had an impact on his career. I didn't really know about it until he brought it up in this conversation. And I think the advice that I gave him and the advice that I give towards the end of this conversation or this little clip is something that you should probably take with you, and it might do you well. So here comes Majosi.
Dude, but I'll tell you one thing. I actually had a conversation with Brad Kleinsmith from Gangs of Ballet about this the other day, dude. But one thing that was like the turning point for me was it was so when I decided that when I was trying to decide what I wanted to do, it was like, am I gonna be myself about this and make music that I enjoy that kind of has Christian undertones, or am I just going to be a straight up gospel singer? Like, what am I going to do, And it was kind of like there wasn't really at that time an example of anyone who had done it. Like,
was it Matthew Mole up there
except for Matthew Mole, except for him. So he was the only one, dude. So we were just like, I just have conversations with guys,
in South Africa, right? Because
back then,
overseas that had happened quite a bit. Like I think a lot of the music you probably grew up listening to had that.
Yeah, 100%, dude. So it was just that, like, would another South African, how much space is there in an already small industry for another person like that,
Well,
so anyways, I remember one time, dude. Yeah, it does. Yeah, you're right, dude. It did. But so this is what I'm saying. So like the one time I was playing at Cool Runnings, and you were there.
I was gonna say, was that the show I was there?
Yes, you were there, dude. And you said something to me. You were like, did you change some of your lyrics? And I was like, yeah, dude, I changed some of my lyrics. I didn't want to like offend you. And you said to me, you're like, no, don't change your lyrics just because I'm in the crowd, dude. Just be yourself, dude. That's what people want to see. They want to see you be yourself, dude. And that literally changed like my whole thinking, dude. That one thing you said to me. Yeah, dude, I don't know if I've mentioned it to you, but that one thing you said to me, it was just like, oh, wow, all I have to do is be myself. And no matter if people agree with me or whatever, like they'll respect me for being myself, dude. And that's what I found out throughout my whole career. Like people, like no one wants to be like an asshole or anything to you. Like people generally aren't like that, People generally are kind and they respect you, And just because you don't agree on certain things doesn't mean that you can't have respect for each other. So that's the one thing I learned for you, dude. And it's honestly been like one of the most important things in my career, So thank you.
That actually, that really stokes me out. And it's like, I mean, it's stuff I've come to on my own, like, as an atheist, because I'm sure you saw a lot of the stuff I used to post, and like I've had a weird relationship when it does come to the religion thing, because I mean I was Christian for a while in my life, and like it's been complicated, but I've also just learned like other people's journeys are their journeys. What they feel in this world is true, is what they feel in this world is true, and you have to tell your truth. Like that's the one thing I know about art. Like it's for art to be good for yourself, like not even for anyone else. And what I'm learning is the more honest you are with yourself and the more you try and just go towards the things you really care about and you really believe in, other people will come on board. And at the same time, it doesn't even matter if other people come on board because you're going to be happy because you're doing the thing that you love, like that makes you you.
100%, dude. 100%. I couldn't say it better myself, dude. All of that is so true, you know. And that's what I try and tell young musicians when they like say ask me for advice, and it's like you can be the most technical singer or guitarist, you can have the most amazing voice, but if you're not being yourself, people will see right through that.
And once again, that was Majosi from episode 65. Now this next clip is from episode 79. It is with Phumlani Phakole, and I understand this might be a difficult clip for some of you to listen to, as Phumlani did tragically pass away earlier this year. This was the only conversation I actually got to have with Phumlani. I really wish that wasn't the case, but I'm grateful that we at least managed to have this chat, and it was a great conversation, a really great back and forth. I loved it. And this particular clip, we talk about the inspiration for his book, Born Freeloaders, and discuss basically what it's like to be black and middle class growing up post-apartheid, and how that all factored into his book, how, you know, it touches on nostalgia, and at the end we also chat a little bit about self-medicating with alcohol and drugs. So here it comes with Phumlani Phakole.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely inspired by like our time, like growing up and like watching people forge new sort of cultures and industries, and exploring different avenues. And so, you know, the whole stupid like idea that like rock and roll is white people music and all of that, when you're like, motherfucker, have you even read a history book?
Yeah.
But like, yeah, so like, but it being new here in South Africa for me, I think, because South Africa is such a weird place, and also like, you know, the new democratic dispensation allows us to express ourselves in different ways. So I was definitely fascinated. Like, so, you know, the Cursed Children of Ham definitely draw inspiration from the Blackjacks. Like you're spot on, from the Blackjacks and like The Brother Moves On, and like. So I'm thinking. So when I was thinking of like the Afrikaans band, for instance, I'm like thinking Fuck Off, you know, and
Fuck
like,
Off, exactly,
and A King and shit like that. So it was definitely a way of like mapping out, you know, the new or the way that like we came up and were forging like new ways of expression and listening to culture and the growth of that evolutionary point of like artistic expression.
Yeah, definitely. Like I could see that, and it felt so. You know, like while it's clearly a black experience, it was something I recognized so much of. And it also gave me insights into a lot of my peers, if that makes sense. Because as a white guy, you know, like I've encountered so many of these characters in the book, but I don't know necessarily where they actually come from, what home life actually is. And I like that this book, for me at least, it gives an insight. And I can imagine for other people, it feels like their lives.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think what's kind of interesting about like what I'm playing with here is this idea of these black kids that are self-aware but aren't necessarily performing contrition and guilt over the fact that they've been born into like privilege, even though they are aware that, you know, the world is fucked up and it's racist and whatever. And you get it from the name of the band, the Cursed Children of Ham.
Yeah,
but. Yeah, like I think it was an opportunity to also explore those like little avenues of having to grow up in like westernized and white spaces and navigate that. And then what does that mean for you as a middle class black kid, you know? And how does that look like as your own story?
Is it somewhat of an autobiography in a way?
People always ask me this. I don't see it. A lot of people think that it's quite like it's quite biography driven, and maybe like when I've got a little bit of distance from it, I'll check it, I'll see it. But for now, I don't. Like I do see what I did was I constructed spaces that I knew and spaces that I'd been in.
Cool.
And sort of
people that you knew.
People that, I mean, very very, very sort of on like a very surface level. I'd pick up mannerisms, or I'd like take a story that I'd heard and like I'd twist it a little bit. But yeah, like there are like evident for me archetypal characters that sort of exist in the story. But yeah, like those archetypal characters become for me universal more than they do become personal, you know?
Okay, I get that. It's just I'm currently working on a movie based on, you know, my experiences in the scene and stuff, and it's not necessarily autobiographical, but yeah, like I was actually reading your book and like feeling heavily inspired. Like tonight I'm definitely going to be working on my script a bit more because yeah, man, you capture like to me like something that we like, it's almost kind of nostalgia, you know. We have that 20-year cycle of nostalgia, but that thing that hasn't necessarily been touched on yet that I haven't necessarily read. I shouldn't say hasn't been touched on yet, because I know there are actually writers. You actually mentioned a few of them who I need to check out in your interview with Pan Macmillan. But for me, it was just like, it's something that I've been trying to do at the moment for myself, is create something from that time period, you know, that like selects, that shows people that I don't know, just that freedom that we kind of had.
Yeah.
And I do feel like while there was a lot of responsibility, there was also just this really free time.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I think, why I wrote these characters without this like performance of contrition, you know, of like being black and being privileged, is because, you know, there was a moment in time where we were just like running rampant and we were just like fucking expressing ourselves, because we are like the original guinea pig generation. I remember I started grade 1 in 94, you know, and so
I was grade 1 or 2 as well.
Yeah, so like we literally are the guinea pigs of this whole shit, and then to like go off the beaten path even further and become reprobates and delinquents, and not follow everyone like, you know, on the typical jock path to success, and actually sort of like enter alternative spaces and look at that like as like a creative freedom, is for me like so important to mark, you know, like, you know, for me like African Dope was a seminal moment in time. And like I remember being in high school and being like, oh my fucking God, what's going on? You know, and then listening to underground rap music that's like literally made as underground rap music for like Groundworks and all of that. And then there was still the Pure Monati show that came on to TV and just changed the whole fucking game, you know? So for me, like that nostalgia is so important because there's so much in there that like allowed us to like break free of like just the pedestrian middle class suburban experience.
And another thing your book does deal with is obviously adolescent partying and drinking and drugs and that sort of thing. It doesn't necessarily
Euphoria, baby.
I mean, I think that's just creative scenes, man. I think that's just music scenes. It's like, unless you're like part of the straight edge vibe, I think it is something that everyone gets caught up in for some period in time. We were kind of discussing it beforehand, you know, in your mid-20s. Everyone, well, not everyone, but everyone I know at least, like, and myself included, lost themselves a little bit in the drink, a little bit in the drugs, some people a bit more than others, you know? So what was your attitude coming into tackling those kind of topics in this book?
Yeah, man, self-medication. Because, you know, you're also, everybody's like, so there's the idea of like, you know, at school, you've got this like path charted out for you. You've got like this routine. You've got all these things that have been done for you, right? But then there's a lot of people, and like I think that's where like this weird like artistic sort of vibe becomes interesting for me, is that I'm already questioning myself at school. Like, where do I exist? Where do I fit in the world? Where am I going to go? What am I going to do with this? Because this can't be it. And so like, you know, like I started smoking weed when I was like 15, and like
same.
And when I was like averaging 6 joints a day, you know, and like just like reading literature way beyond my years, but like holding on to the little bits that I could.
Sounds like we had a similar upbringing.
Yeah, right. Like when you're like 15 and you're just like dropping the name Jean-Paul Sartre
Bro,
And
I literally read a Noam Chomsky book on fucking economics in the Mediterranean or something. Like, because that was the only book in the library by Noam Chomsky, and I had no fucking clue what was going on. But you know, fucking
Yeah.
NoFX mentioned them, so I was like, cool, let's read some Chomsky.
Exactly, dude. Like, and I was like, I remember I started Black Skins, White Masks when I was like 15, with Franz Fanon. And, you know, like, I was like, I could grab some of these concepts, but I couldn't really. But then also, then I'm like, oh shit, Dumi, when Dumi was a part of the volume.
Yeah.
It was like mentioning like Franz Fanon, and I'm like, oh shit, nigga, don't worry, I'm already on that, bro. Like, I'm already there. So like, I'm like, okay, cool. Like, that's a good place to go. But I mean, there's also like this like existential angst and dread that comes with being a teenager, right? Because this is when you have to forge your identity, and you're being forced to start thinking like almost as a human, and you find yourself in the scene where smoking, drinking, taking drugs is like the norm. I also wanted to explore the idea of recreational drug use and what does that mean? What does it look like to like just be against it the whole time, or can it actually serve a purpose? I think the addiction sort of narrative and the legal sort of narrative is sort of played out. And we need to really interrogate that a little bit more, because we've got the wildest constitution in that it's like so goddamn progressive, but we're still coming from a Calvinist framework and influence of like heavy Christian moral duty that then doesn't allow people to be who they are, rather enforces them like to be who the state wants them to be. So it's like, I think we're coming from like a very, very interesting like background in history. And yeah, man, drugs saved the kids.
If you want to hear more from that conversation, check out episode 79 with Pomlani Pakoli. Now, this next clip is with the one and only Moonchild Sanelli. It's from episode 81. And while I was originally going to post her talking about how she came to work with Beyonce, this clip actually, I think, explains a lot of her rebellious nature, and it explains, like how her mom instilled this radical ideology into her of never being a follower, always being a leader. And I think that has worked out pretty well for Moonchild Sanelli. That is like one of your powers, essentially, the ability to laugh at yourself. So it means, because you have faced a lot of criticism over the years, but you always manage to like just throw it back in people's faces. So I assume that comes from being young.
Absolutely. I come from having to like, if I'm misunderstood, I can defend myself. At least I have a channel. So I'm going to win at dance competitions. I'm going to win at whatever. That at least I was allowed, because I never went to shebeens. I never was sent to buy cigarettes. My mom literally like sheltered me. And she still also didn't teach me how to wash dishes or cook, because she wasn't grooming me for a man later in life, but she groomed me for myself and to be able to be independent as a girl child. And I feel like, so by the time anyone tells me anything in the world about what they think of me, the one person who bred me to be this and the one person I would have done anything in the world for besides not be happy is my mother. And she's the one who gave me a blessing. So everyone else will fall in line, because they literally have to adjust to me, because I'm not going to adjust to them. Another thing that always sticks out is when I remember when I was younger, my mom would shout at me for walking behind a group of friends. Even if you're going to buy sweets, like innocent things, she'd say, you never follow. You always are in the line learning what the leader's doing for them to follow you, or you're in the front and they're following you, but you never follow. So I get more scolding for that more than anything I would have done that's wrong. But for following, she would just like, no, you do not follow. So I then grew up as a rebel, I think, in general, but one that was not, I wasn't rebelling against things I wasn't allowed to do. I was rebelling against what everyone thought was cool to do, and I would just do my own. But my mom instilled that thing of never following. You don't have to follow. You mustn't follow. Not you don't have to. You must never follow. So without me knowing, I think it's just like one of those things as a kid that just get instilled in you. So then I stayed a virgin in school. Everyone was having sex, didn't have the FOMO. Everyone was clubbing. I was at home and either dance competitions, traveling the country, so the space she created for me didn't make me have FOMO for the things that all the other kids would do. So I just like I just go home, watch porn if I'm done with rehearsal, put my fairy tale book, and when the girls that engage in sex are asked what is a cock, and they don't know, and I tell them, they think I'm lying because I'm not having sex. I'm just like, y'all are dumb, but it's fine. Because I can't now explain I'm watching porn, might be in more trouble. So,
But
yeah.
so obviously, well, what was the situation there? So were you wanting to have sex, but were worried because everyone else was doing it, that was a thing that you wouldn't want to do? Or what was your thinking at that time?
It was, I don't know if it was a thinking because of something that was instilled by my mom to me. I think I just naturally didn't find things it wasn't peer pressure, because peer pressure would make me force or whatever. It wasn't, do you know, like when you just do things your way because of how you've been brought up. So it wasn't necessarily a thought process. I just wasn't interested. I thought boys were dumb, and I'd get their numbers and stalk them with different accents on the phone. That was my fun. So, like, do you know what I mean? So it's not like I said I'm not going to do this because they're all doing it. I just wasn't interested because it was just like, oh wow, you guys think this is the coolest because you're all doing it. Smoking, I wasn't interested because not everyone was really doing it. I just wasn't interested. So it's like I rebelled with a cause. I didn't rebel without a cause. I didn't just because now they're not drinking, I'm drinking. It wasn't like that, but it was like a rebellious personality, but that had a cause, because it wouldn't rebel towards fucked up shit that creates a FOMO that is unnecessary. And maybe because there was never enough time for me to be in the streets to be like the other children. That's what my mom took me away from. So therefore that already protected me, because I already had a channel. I didn't have to go to a shebeen or have to date to have to spend my time. My time was already occupied. So I didn't, I wasn't bored to try out shit that I would have if I had time. Nor did I have FOMO because I could have dated at the dance class. So it was like my time was occupied with things that were so much more fun and interesting and were building my personality to become the person I am now.
And that was episode 81 with Moonchild Sinelli. Go check that out if you want to hear more. Up next, we have Hallie Haller from episode 90. And I'm going to keep this short because it is a short clip that basically explains how she put her short film Belovely on the shelf for 4 years after shooting it, and how lockdown allowed her to look at it with fresh eyes. Here comes Hallie Haller.
So a little bit about background on this film is that I actually shot it it's nearly 4 years ago now, and I only released it last year. And that's because we shot it, I tried to edit it, I had a corporate job that I was really struggling to love, is the most euphemistic way to put that. I just got sad about my inability to make it what I wanted it to be. And then because we were in lockdown, I opened up this film again that I really thought was terrible and gone laid to waste. And because I'd forgotten exactly how perfect I wanted it to be, because I was less of a perfectionist about it because of the time, that had passed, I was able to put it together. And I think that's such an important thing, to be able to take space from something and that being part of the process and not punishing yourself too much for it. Yeah. Yeah. So that's, it wasn't something that I just did overnight with a couple of friends and then it was an instant success,
If you want to hear more of that conversation, check out episode 90 of the podcast with Hallie Haller. And that brings us to episode 94 with Loyiso Gola. Now, this one also had many, many quotables throughout the conversation, but I decided to focus on something I wanted to chat to Loyiso about for quite a while. Ever since he posted about Twitter isn't real, I wanted to dig into that and figure out what he meant by that. So this next clip is about the very real effects of social media on his life, but how they might not necessarily affect everyone else. Here it comes with Loyiso Gola. You're mentioning getting sucked into social media just now, but you're also someone who has very much advocated that Twitter isn't real. So where do you stand on that these days?
When I said it isn't real, I was just saying, I was talking particularly in the South African context. It's number one.
Sure.
A majority of the people do not have Twitter. The majority of South Africans don't use Twitter. The majority of South Africans struggling to access internet. So I think it's tantamount to just abject poverty. To not be able to access information on 2021. It's worse than it's worse than famine almost. It's information.
The inequality that it creates.
Yeah. So, but it's not like we're not capable of, it's just we elected the wrong people. So they don't. It's not like it's a crazy thing. You're in South Africa, 2021, and people can say and confidently say that I can't access that job and opportunity because I don't have the internet and all applications are online. So that one excludes. That's a crazy thing.
Yeah.
That's crazy considering it shouldn't be like a thing that stands in people's way of just surviving. You know, once it's that,
I'm with you 100%.
It's the most painful thing to watch. It's painful to watch cell phone companies overcharge for this data. It's painful to watch government just be lackadaisy about a situation that affects the majority. Because once you have the internet, your brain is in that world, and it allows you to create businesses, and it allows you to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, man, half my life has been because of the internet. Like everything I'm doing, but everything I've learned in the last 10 years has come from access to the internet. Not even 10 years, 15 years. So I'm 100% with you there, man.
The way money moves, the way, you understand what I'm saying? Everything is on the internet. Right? Now, for you to not be on the internet in that way is...
So, but with the statement, Twitter is not real, and with this disconnect that there is, so there's obviously this portion of society and culture that thinks that they're moving things forward in South Africa because they've got access and they can talk to each other all day and, they're part of the conversation. But how do you see it from the other side then? Because in reality, I think, especially in stand-up comedy, you kind of see that South Africa is many different things, but that people on the ground aren't experiencing the same thing that the middle classes necessarily are. And so was that kind of the whole Twitter isn't real thing, and that it doesn't have necessarily the effect that people think it does, or people that are involved in it think it does?
Yeah. So Twitter would have an effect in my life because, if I'm being honest, a lot of the people that consume what I do on stage, people who can pay $200 for a ticket to see me are generally middle class-ish people, right?
Yeah.
And so that would be in turn my audience. So if I do something that gets me canceled or whatever the case is, that's definitely my reality because those are the people I've connected. But there's people who it wouldn't affect them at all. You'd be like, yeah, I could still go to perform in the rows of Zimbabwe. People will pay $80, 40,000 people. I'll get my check out. Or, there's a way that doesn't include the people that are on Twitter. That's what I meant.
And that was Louisa Gola from episode 94. And that is it. That is episode 100 done and dusted. I just want to say thank you so much for listening to all of this. I hope you got a lot of value out of this look back at the last 2.5 years of this humble little podcast. And I look forward to seeing many, many, many of you along this journey to episode 1000. Enjoy the rest of your day. I hope load shedding doesn't get you down. And I hope we all get vaccinated real soon. Later.